T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
This is my last mission and I'm out for blood. Gonna put your ass in submission and smear your face in the mud.
I see it coming and I can't wait much longer. How can I feeling that I'm wasting the day? When I see it coming and I hope it lasts forever. I tried to fight it but it's slipping away.
Welcome, friends, to the Pioneers of the Independent Networks. I'm your host, Ricky Blues. This is your co-host, Tim Walker. And friends, if you've joined us in the past, you know that we bring to you all the characters, the organizations, the feuds, the matches, the promotions that populated the Mid-Atlantic independent wrestling scene from the 1970s to today. Tim, that's some decades, right?
Makes me feel old.
We are definitely getting old. As a matter of fact, our tickers aren't so good anymore because we're getting so old. And that brings me to the topic that I want to talk to you about today. Heart-stopping moments that you've witnessed firsthand in the wrestling game. Whether you saw it live, whether you covered it live, or whether you were part of it. Heart-stopping meaning it's the one that got the big pop, brought the fans to their feet, and it was like that oh my God moment.
Wow. I've seen two absolutely heart-stopping moments
Okay?
in person
All right?
over the years.
Okay?
I can count them. Just two.
Just two.
I've seen a lot of great moments, but when you say it's a heart-stopping moment,
Uh-huh.
that lends itself to a little bit more importance and puts a lot of weight into a certain moment.
Right. It's a weighted moment. It's important. All right. Tim, give us moment number one.
First heart-stopping moment was a Saturday night's main event
Okay?
that I got to attend in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Okay. What year? Is that about 86?
That was somewhere around there. I think it was 1987.
Okay, around 87.
Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage had a huge feud when Savage first came into the WWF.
Right?
There was a huge rivalry between the two. As a matter of fact, one night in Baltimore, I got to see Hogan and Savage wrestle in front of a full house.
Mm-hmm.
It was jam-packed, and you could just feel the electricity running through the building. And there was a line outside that building for people just wanting to get inside. And believe me, if you were lucky enough to get inside that building, you could just feel it in the air. And there weren't a lot of matches at that time that you just felt that tension and electricity in the air. Well, this night in Hershey, at Saturday night's main event, there was a match between Randy Savage and the Honky Tonk Man. And it was a pretty darn good match. But the match was just a background
Mm-hmm.
for a huge angle where the Hart Foundation interfered
Right?
and they held Savage
With Jimmy Hart.
with Jimmy Hart at Jimmy Hart's direction, where the Hart Foundation held Randy Savage by each of his arms. Bret Hart had one arm, Jim Neidhart had the other arm, and they were holding him in the ring for the Honky Tonk Man, who was armed with his trademark guitar.
Right?
And the Honky Tonk Man took his good old time. Took the guitar, pounded it on the mat. You could feel the anticipation in the building. It was insane. And as he went to hit Savage over the head with the guitar, Miss Elizabeth came into the ring, and she stood between the Honky Tonk Man and Randy Savage.
Right.
And that was something you never saw before. You never saw Miss Elizabeth enter the ring without Randy holding the ropes for her and directing her in the ring.
Right.
Miss Elizabeth entered the ring on her own volition, and it was not lost on that crowd. The crowd gasped as she stood in front of the Honky Tonk Man.
And cowered with her hands up and pleading.
Pleading with the Honky Tonk Man not to hit Randy over the head with that guitar. And this was a time when Randy really wasn't a good guy.
Right.
And he really wasn't a bad guy.
He was the original anti-hero.
He was kind of in between.
Right.
But the fans were picking up the momentum, and they knew he was a great wrestler and a
Right.
great character, and they had a vested interest in Randy and Miss Elizabeth.
Right.
They were two characters that the audience had grown to love, despite
They were compelling. Despite the negativity.
Despite
Right.
the actions that he had taken in the
In the past.
against people like Hulk Hogan and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Right.
They had a soft spot in their heart for Randy because he was exciting. He was interesting. He was a great wrestler. She stood in front of the Honky Tonk Man, and he took his arm, and he swiped his arm across her shoulder and pushed her down to the mat. And we had never seen that before.
Nope.
And she was pushed down to the mat. And when she started to get back to her feet, her dress had been torn. One of the shoulder straps had torn off her dress. I don't know if that was intentional or if that was just
Part
a
of. Right.
stroke of good luck.
Right.
Because it made it even more.
It became visual. Very visual.
It became very visual and very realistic that she had been shoved down to the mat and she had torn her beautiful gown. She was backed up into the corner then, not knowing what to do. So she got out of the ring and she left the ringside area.
Right.
Everyone assuming that she had been hurt by the Honky Tonk Man. And she left and she headed back to the locker room as fast as she could. While she was away from the ring, the Honky Tonk Man loaded up the guitar and he smashed it over Randy Savage's head. And the guitar broke into a million pieces. And the dust flew, and there's a big visual, and Randy slumped down to the mat. Miss Elizabeth comes back from the locker room, and you see the big spotlight from the Hershey Park Arena is down on the runway. And you see Miss Elizabeth dragging Hulk Hogan by the arm to the ring. Hulk's very reluctantly being drug along.
Yep.
When he gets to the ring, Hulk is a ball of fire. And he starts taking on Honky Tonk
The Heart Foundation.
and both the Heart Foundation members. And he starts cleaning house. But the numbers start to take their toll. 3-on-1. Well, while all this has been going on, Randy is making a spectacular recovery.
Right. His comeback. It's coming
He's
up.
starting to come up. And when Hulk gets in trouble, Randy's back on his feet. And he starts fighting with the Honky Tonk Man and the Heart Foundation. Well, finally, Hulk's back to his feet. Randy's on his feet. There's a bunch of mayhem going on in the ring. Punches being thrown back and forth. While Randy and Hulk back into each other and collide back to back. And they spin around and they stare at each other. Fists clenched. Are they going to fight or are they going to make friends? And Miss Elizabeth is witness to all this. And of course she's yelling at both of them not to fight with each other. And she catches their attention. They both look at her. And then they extend the hands.
And the handshake comes.
And the handshake comes. That was a huge moment. I've never heard anything so loud
The pop of that.
in my life. The people just went insane. It was a sold-out crowd at Hershey Park that night. Everybody on their feet. Everybody screaming at the top of their lungs. And what a moment. And it was captured so perfectly on television.
Right.
On Saturday night's main event. So not only did I get to witness it, I got to witness it firsthand, but everybody throughout the whole country got to witness it on Saturday night's main event. What a moment that was.
And that's one of the most important things, Tim, that you just said. Your firsthand experience there. But the Saturday night's main event, this wasn't cable. This wasn't closed circuit. This was broadcast television, NBC, right?
NBC, 11:30. It's Saturday night. It took the place of Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Live, exactly. Broadcast television so that the entire country could tune in. No special TBS, no special USA, none of that. This was NBC, one of the three big networks, and it made that much impact. What a moment to take the heartbeat of the country on broadcast television and bring together. I can assure you that I was watching that as well, and that was a big pop in my household. It was like, are they, yeah, there it is. And of course, any wrestling fan is going to know that exact thing.
It still stands up to this day.
Absolutely.
If you watch it today, all the drama, all the excitement, all the anticipation that went into that, you can still feel it by watching it on television today.
And it was the most important thing was there was a big payoff later to come. Because of that, it's almost like the birth point that you'd witnessed. It was
When the madness met the mania.
exactly.
It was a true moment that I'll never forget. I'll never forget how loud it was and how everyone's focus was right there on what was happening in the ring. There was no one looking around at the popcorn vendor or at the person next to them talking to them or whatever. Everyone's focus was right there. The two biggest stars in wrestling. What is going to happen between them? The other heart-stopping moment that I remember happened in Baltimore at the Baltimore Arena in August of 1992.
Is that Great American Bash?
It was not the Great American Bash. It was a television taping after the Great American Bash.
Okay.
This was an amazing moment in and of itself. Bill Watts was in charge of WCW at that time.
Okay.
And it had been rumored through all the newsletters that Bill was there to get the spending under control.
Okay.
And he was there to reduce the payroll. And he was trying to force several wrestlers into accepting lower paying contracts. In particular, Brian Pillman
Okay.
had a very nice contract at the time, and Bill Watts was trying to renegotiate Pillman's deal so that Pillman would accept less money. Pillman wanted none of it. So every week on television, you would see Pillman's quote-unquote punishment.
Right.
And he would lose matches week after week to wrestlers who the fans did not view as having the same amount of skill or ability.
Okay.
Week after week this would happen. And he would get beat down week after week. But he was resolute in his conviction. He would not accept less money. He fairly negotiated his contract, and he expected to be paid per the contract. It was a fair deal.
Right.
They'd signed the agreement, the handshakes were made, so he expected to get paid according to his contract, and he did not want to renegotiate. With all that going on in the background, Bill Watts also was bringing in wrestlers like Tony Atlas and the Barbarian,
Right.
wrestlers who were getting paid at a lower
rate.
level
Mhm.
than some of the other stars who were being let go. So it was clear that there was a cost-cutting measure going on in WCW. I think even to the casual fan, they could sense this.
Right.
By the newsletters, it was pretty well known. That was Bill's job in WCW, was to lower the payroll.
He was a hired gun, and he was a headhunter at that time.
And it just so happened that a few months prior to that, Jake the Snake Roberts had been released by WWF, or WWE. There were rumors going around. Would Jake sign with WCW? Bill Watts, when asked about that by some of the newsletter writers, would constantly deny that Jake was coming to WCW, which fell in line with the cost-cutting measures that were going on at that time. So it was widely believed that Jake Roberts wasn't going to come into WCW. Well, that day, Big Van Vader was to wrestle Sting in a rematch for the title.
Right.
Sting had an earlier television match at the tapings. And all of a sudden, after his match, Jake the Snake Roberts came out of the crowd and gave Sting the DDT.
Wow.
And Sting didn't get up from that DDT. He was down and out for the count. So we had a problem. Problem was, we had a title match with Big Van Vader, and Bill Watts was big on, when we have a title match, we're going to deliver
A title
match. Well, what to do? Well, they took a hat and put everybody's name in a hat. And they drew a name out of the hat to see who would challenge Big Van Vader. And that was... And the name drawn out of that hat was Ron Simmons. And at that point, the crowd just went crazy with anticipation of seeing Ron Simmons take on Big Van Vader. No one had any idea at that point what was going to happen.
Right.
Big Van Vader had just beaten Sting to win the heavyweight title. He had mowed through the competition in WCW. He was the unbeatable monster at that point. There was nobody that could beat him. It was surprising that he mowed through Sting like he mowed through Sting. They had some great matches, but he beat Sting cleanly every time.
Yeah.
Who could take him out? That was a big question. Who's going to take out Vader?
Vader, yep.
Well, this day in Baltimore, Ron Simmons got his title match with Big Van Vader. And it was a hell of a match. And Simmons was taking a beating like you couldn't believe. But he made his big comeback, and he caught Vader with a huge power slam. And to everyone's surprise, pinned Vader cleanly in the middle of the ring. 1, 2, 3. And the fans went crazy. It was just amazing to see people jumping up and down, screaming. It was so loud. It was one of those moments.
The pop, the concussion.
Oh, the pop was amazing. Everyone just jumping up and down. Just their hero had come from out of nowhere. This was so unexpected. The match wasn't even supposed to happen. And Vader was such an incredibly big, huge man. And I should say, earlier in the card, he had just absolutely destroyed Bob Starr.
Right.
It made him look even bigger, badder, meaner than ever, as he had destroyed one of our local favorites, Bob Starr. And then he took on Ron Simmons, and Ron Simmons scored the ultimate upset.
What a heart-stopping moment.
It was. It was so unexpected. It was so surprising. It came out of the blue from nowhere. Not only was it so surprising that Jake the Snake Roberts made an appearance and came out of the crowd unexpectedly and DDT'd one of our favorites, Sting.
Right. Who had won that title in Baltimore at the Great American Bash.
Yes, from Ric Flair the
Right.
year before. So Baltimore was really a big Sting town.
Yes, absolutely.
And now, Ron Simmons was the world heavyweight champion. And it was amazing, and it changed the whole course of the company.
Absolutely did. Wow. Two incredible moments. Fortunate enough to witness those firsthand. That's what we're talking about. Heart-stopping moments.
Ricky, I'm really interested in what heart-stopping moments our viewers have seen over the years.
Exactly. We're talking about what we've witnessed firsthand. We've got a broad audience. They each have had to have experienced something heart-stopping in this business that's endeared it to them. That big pop, that low feeling, whatever it is, that heart-stopping moment. We are so interested in hearing what you have to say. So please, don't make this one-sided. This is interactive. Join in. Let us know how you feel and what your experience in that heart-stopping realm was. You don't know when that heart-stopping experience is going to be there that endears you for the rest of your life, that you can pinpoint to the exact day, time, and hour that it happened, that gave you that elation as a fan. So ladies and gentlemen, for Tim Walker, I'm your host, Ricky Blues, thanking you for joining us, telling you to join us again next week as we take another stroll down Concussion Lane.